Gentlemen, welcome to week 2. I actually did not know that I was going to do this until I received a text message roughly 11 minutes ago from Trampus Whalen. Also represents Team Mark Kelly. They went off for 148 last week. A couple of you had said that you enjoyed this. Trampus begged for a week 2 preview. Just happens that I have my prep period right now. Thank you for paying your taxes. And we'll go ahead and go through a brief recap of week 1 and possibly looking into week 2. I went 3-3 last week on my picks. I did pick myself over Trampus and Mark's team. Was not aware of the explosiveness of several of their players. Also, I think they got a touchdown from Eric Decker, which, whatever. 148. There was only one score all of last year that was higher than that, and I believe that was by Gray's team. Tough to beat the guy you're playing when he goes for 148. We had a grinded out affair here. Simply simple. Came up with the win. Apologize for the interruption. There was a knock at my door. A student needed me. Grind out affair here. Okay. Here we had Chris's team that went nuts. Jeremy Hill, Julio Jones. I believe Tyler Eifert as well paid off for him. Jesse was bitter about not winning with the score. Luckbox and Luke had a couple guys do nothing. I think going forward, Olsen will be better than he was. Luke also got 0 from Deshaun. Just a tough week for Luke. No Mike Evans. Lollipop Guild, as I've kind of predicted here, Butt Buddies, it was a tough matchup for them. They really had no one come through. A lot of letdowns on that team. But I think you can wait a couple weeks, see if those players are going to be better this year before they can start panicking. And then here we have 50 Shades of Clay. Gray's team did not produce very well, and Brent 97 points. It's going to win you at least half the time, maybe not quite, but decent week for Brent. This week, I've been talking for 2 minutes and 4 seconds, which leaves me roughly 2 minutes per matchup if I need that much. Again, this is how it appears on my screen, and the one thing here, I cannot see the bench players. It does show me injuries, but I'm just going to go with who you have in your roster now. First stating that this is a must-win week for Juice Me Up. The one thing that makes me feel a little bit better is that my bye weeks are spaced out pretty well, that I think there's 1 week I'm going to lose, but you always hate going 0-2, specifically in a league where only half the teams make the playoffs. So I have to pick my team. Or do I not? Okay, we'll go ahead and go with the matchups here. San Francisco's defense looked pretty good. The one thing that's nice is Tyler's maybe most explosive player. Guy who can go off sometimes. I kind of have him here because without Bryant, likelihood of Brown dipping into Big Ben and kind of equalizing that is good for me. This is a good matchup. Lynch usually does great things against good teams. Not in love with Lamar Miller at Jacksonville. For whatever reason, they really didn't use Lamar Miller very much last week. Calvin Johnson only had, I think, 4 targets last week. So Golden Tate, who knows where the ball's going there. I love Jordan Matthews, but I think Sam Bradford targeted 10 different players in the first quarter of that game or something ridiculous. So I think the ceiling is not as high as we might think, but the floor is pretty impressive there. My advantages are obviously going to always be in the same places. Gronkowski, Antonio Brown, Chris Ivory is going to be a top 15 back, and Adrian Peterson. Eli got me 7 last week in a really good matchup. And I'm anticipating here this is not going to be CJ Spiller. Simply wanted to get my boyfriend in the lineup. I'm going to go ahead and pick Ty's team in this one. Do I really think he will win? That doesn't matter. Picking Ty's team. I need a win. Need a win. Get back to week 2 here. Gonna go with NA and shake and bake here. Go into our preview, and I have to pause again. Another knock at the door. Inconsiderate students today. Here we have NA, Mark and Kelly's team, just coming off a huge week. Like I said, only one higher score in all of last season. They saw Carlos Hyde, DeAndre Hopkins, Jason Witten all become apparently fantasy monster stars. This matchup against Jesse, who really needs a win. Wow, this is going to be interesting. Jesse lost a player to injury, Andre Ellington, which Andre Ellington gets injured. That's what he does. T.Y. Hilton, who didn't do much for Jesse, but also isn't in his lineup. Jesse spent a whole bunch of money on Terrence Williams. who he's hoping gets deep against Philly this week. Better matchup for Jesse for both of his receivers here. We'll see. We'll see how good Beckham is. Is he really that guy we saw at the end of last season, or is he going to be, a little bit not quite as impressive? Tough matchup here for Alfred Morris, who had a good game last week. I mean, Lynch did okay, 4 yards a carry. Alfred Morris is not Lynch, and I think the St. Louis gets up in that game. Is Alfred Morris going to be in? This is a tough one for me to pick here. I'm actually leaning. I'm going to go with an A. I think Trampus and Mark find a way to get to 2-0 here. I like some of these matchups. Aaron Rodgers might temper expectations a little bit with the Seattle matchup. I think there's something here with this team right now. I think Jesse's team is going to worry him a little bit. Calvin didn't get targeted. Beckham not as good. Kelsey's not going to go off again. I'm going to go with Trampus and Mark in this matchup. You did notice that Jesse did spend $4 on his kicker. Interesting strategy. Let's see how that works out for him. Here we have the Mighty Midgets and Ram, who was at the game last night. Watched his last week. Watched his Rams beat Seattle in a very fun to watch game. I've noticed here Adam Brandt has an alarmingly low projection. Peyton did not look good last week at all. And Adam's still waiting on Le'Veon Bell to stop smoking weed and get on the field. Looking at this, Chris has some huge monster players. I think Jeremy Hill is a top 3 running back, top 4. I would have drafted him over I would have drafted him above Jamal Charles for one. I know Chris kept him. Andrew's going to be better. I don't think this is a matchup where he goes off in, but last week certainly was not good. TJ Yeldon you can't expect a lot out of, but Julio Jones is a monster. I just think these two players here, Chris has as good running back receiver 1-2 punch as anyone. I would like to think AP and Antonio Brown are as good on my team, but I would lean maybe a little bit Chris's way there. Butt Buddies and Luck Box, another kind of must-win early in the year for the Butt Buddies, and Adam's team, as we've discussed, is pretty solid. And he also you see signed Chris Johnson. Really good matchup at Chicago because they are terrible, as has been stated. Adam has great matchups top to bottom. Arizona's defense was horrible last week, just surprisingly not good there. Gave up some big plays. One to a former Ball State receiver, Willie Snead. Just feel like Jimmy Graham gets in the end zone at least once in this game, and it's going to be an entertaining game to watch there. Dante Moncrief. This is what I'm talking about with Adam, and I've said this, is he makes some sneaky pickups. And sometimes he does them in timely fashions, but he has Chris Johnson. He already had Moncrief, unless I don't believe he picked him up this week. Adam stumbles into good situations one way or another. And frankly, I think he wins this matchup. I think Danny and Ryan's team, they just are kind of old. Frank Gore didn't look good last week. Andre Johnson looked even worse. And we're going against the Jets team. We are at home. We're a lot better at home. But, this is a good matchup there. That's certainly a good matchup. Russell Wilson, again, it's the rushing yards and how often he's going to target Jimmy Graham. But, again, he's covered there a little bit. I like when you have your opposing quarterback's best target. Always a fan of that. I'm going with Luckbox to get to 2-0 here and possibly worry our defending lovers and champions just a little bit. Here we have Luke's team. Luke's kind of bitter. A lot of guys going down to him, and he's playing his bestie friend here, Gray Suman. Big Packer fan. Luke has a tough matchup for Tom Brady at Buffalo. We saw what Andrew Luck did there. I do think that Brady will have a couple touchdowns in that game. Brady doesn't struggle as much in those divisional games as some other some other quarterbacks do, and frankly, he just throws from the one a lot. Um, I think we saw that DeMarco Murray is going to be a touchdown machine again in that offense. He's going to get a lot of opportunities to get in the end zone. DeAngelo Williams was fantastic last week. Looked like better than maybe he's ever looked since he was in Memphis in college. Is this a tough matchup, or is Minnesota just that terrible? What a horrible game plan they put together. Let's have Teddy Bridgewater win the game. Smart. How'd that work out for you? You scored 3 points. Mike Evans isn't going to play, so Luke needs to do something there. He wanted Terrence Williams, but not all of us knew Jesse was going to spend $41 for his services. That is 25% of Jesse's FAAB for the year if you're doing the math, by the way. Greg Olson's going to get in the end zone in this game. I read an article today on Roto World, I believe it was, saying that Carolina realized that they need to force the ball to Greg Olson because he's their only good player. So Luke's going to have better days from his tight end there. Melvin Gordon scares me a little bit. And just looking at this matchup, both teams in not must-win situations, but you hate to get to 0-2. Man, this is a tough one for me. Jacksonville's defense isn't as bad as you would like to think. LaShawn, is he healthy? This is a tough one for me. Frankly, I wish I was playing either one of these teams this week instead of Tyler. Just not in love with these matchups. But just based off of, man, I'm gonna go with Luke's team just by a small margin. I mean, I think it's the underdog, and on paper, I think some of these receivers, and certainly C.J. Anderson, are more explosive. I just don't know how much stock we can put in these Buffalo and these Denver players. That just I'm gonna go with Luke's team there, and I think that's one I might miss. Lastly, here we have Lollipop Yields, and it's Dez for 6. Brent got to 1-0, as did Jason. Jason doesn't usually win 2 games in a row because he's really a far below average fantasy player. But here he's got a good matchup for Matt Ryan, Eddie Lacy in a prime time, big time event of a game here against Seattle. Gotta think he bounces back. He's a little bit quiet last week. I think he gets in the end zone. I don't love LeGarrette Blount in this matchup, first game back. Plus he's probably going to be high or drunk or on purple drink. I like LeGarrette Blount. I don't like him this week. I don't. That's just me. Jarvis Landry, I think Jacksonville's defense is proving better than people think. Jarvis Landry's not going to get in the end zone very often. Not in love with that. Brandon Cooks, we don't know what happened to him last week, but he was terrible. Jordan Reed, a lot of people like. Matthew Berry's favorite player. And Jason seems going to implement if you don't know which receiver you can trust in New Orleans, let's play both of them and not play Willie Snead or Marcus Colston or the tight end. So we'll see how that works out for him. Not in love with that decision, which is why I'm going to pick it's Dez for 6 again. I mean, I just think Brent's give me plays. I'll take the upside of all of these players over Jason. Really, I like Devontae Adams more than this here, so I kind of disagree with that check, although I can't really tell where it is. I like Brent's team a lot. I would call this my lock of the week and take it's Dez for 6. So guys, I tell you what, if some of you still watch the preview, that's fine. I enjoy doing it, but Trampus is the only one that watches it. Here's to you, Tramp. I hope that you lose this week for what you did to me last week. Boys, it'll be a good week. I hope you enjoy it. I also recommend FanDuel over DraftKings. Good day, my men.